You've got a whole minute. It's all right. Come on in. It is time to begin. Jim, would you please lead us in prayer? Okay, I have a couple of apologies to make. Number one, 4 people have asked me already why I don't have a fish shirt on tonight. They're all in the wash, so I have no more fish shirts. You don't have to worry about that. And the other thing is, if you were here this morning, you already heard this lesson. So try to act interested. And we'll hope we'll have something here again that is worth hearing twice. Our theme is Sharing Our Savior, SOS. That is a rescue call. And why are we interested in sending out a rescue call? Here's a hint. In Acts 4 and verse 12, there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven that has been given among men by which we must be saved. We're interested in sending out the rescue call because outside of Christ, is there any salvation? The obvious answer to that is no. Doctrine of the New Testament, salvation is only in Jesus. Now, Ken and Mark, 2 of the other elders, have already spoken. We thank them for the good job that they did, and I'm going to depart from the format. I don't do it intentionally, and I don't do it to confuse anybody, but when we started on Monday, as we did 10 years ago when we did this material the first time, I kind of organized things in a way that suited me. I'd like everybody to turn to Ezekiel chapter 47. Ezekiel's vision. Now, if you can give me a rundown on the last 8 chapters of the book of Ezekiel, we'll be really impressed, because that takes some kind of memory to bring that up if you haven't reviewed it in a while. The nation of Judah has gone into Babylonian captivity. Their morale is horrible. The valley of the dry bones. Those dry bones represented what they felt about their prospects as a nation. Ezekiel sees this valley covered in dry bones, and God says, "Son of man, this is the house of Judah." They say, "Our bones are dry, our hope is cut off." So they thought they were all done as a nation. Well, the last 8 chapters of Ezekiel is to show them, no, you're not done as a nation. In those chapters, God will show them a great temple. And this is a temple that has never been built in this world. The dimensions don't relate to anything anywhere. It's something beyond that. And he shows them a great prince that isn't like any other prince that Judah ever had, because he's doing things that the prince of Judah wasn't legally able to do. He shows them all of this, and he shows them a great city. And the great city doesn't really correlate to anything either. It has all kinds of measurements, and it's obvious that he's showing them a vision. And as he's showing them a vision of things to come, we come to the 47th chapter, and we find that the vision also involves a river. Now, this river, it's a special river. He looks up in the vision, and he sees the temple, and the altar of the temple, and a little trickle of water flows out from under the altar, goes out the door of the temple to the east, goes out, and then turns south. And the funny thing about this river, starts out as a little trickle, and the farther it goes, the deeper it gets, and the wider it gets. It's just going, getting bigger. Is that typical for a river? Do rivers get smaller or bigger as they go along? Unless tributaries are feeding them, they get smaller as they go to the sea. So this river is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Picture it this way, because as he describes this river, notice the elements that we see there. In the 8th verse of chapter 47, "Then he said to me, these waters go out toward the eastern region and down into the Arabah." You got the water. In the 9th verse, everything the water touches lives. Water gives life. And I mean, if it touches it, it lives. In the 10th verse, at this river, you see all kinds of fishermen, and you see all kinds of fish getting caught. And then in the 11th verse, funny thing about it, and this is what we're talking about tonight, the marshes are left alone because they're needed for salt. And then in the 12th verse, along the sides of the river, there's all kinds of trees for fruit, for food, and for healing. Now, this is an amazing river. The primary thing we think of is this river's going out. Anything it touches lives. Now, here's why that's important. Those elements that you see up on that board, how many of them were incorporated into the preaching of Jesus? All of them. Now, when we think about this, the water. John the 4th chapter, the woman at the well, Jesus said, if you'd have known the gift of God and who you're talking to, you would have asked and he would have given you what? Living water. Where do you think he got that? Well, of course, he's responsible for the scriptures in the first place. But that wasn't something made up on the spot. That was something that's the fulfillment of prophecy, the living water. Everything the river touches lives. Did Jesus bring life? The life is in the Son. The fishermen and the fish. What can you tell me about fishermen? First lesson. Follow me and I will make you what? Fishers of men. Fruit, food, and healing. Does the Lord furnish us with spiritual food? Does He heal us? This is a picture of the gospel going forth into the world. All of these elements that we see in this picture, and just let the picture dwell in your mind because it is a beautiful picture. The river gets bigger and bigger and bigger the farther it goes. And by the way, can you see any connection between that and Daniel, the 2nd chapter, and Nebuchadnezzar's dream? In Nebuchadnezzar's dream, little stone cut out of the mountain without hands smites the image in the feet, and what happens to it? It becomes a great mountain and fills the whole earth. It starts small and grows bigger and bigger and bigger. This prophecy, and I know I bring this up every 5 or 10 years because I love it. Hope we get to the point where we remember, but that's just a beautiful picture of the gospel going forth into the world. Now, what I've tried to do with this series of lessons, the stories that the ones who put the material together, the stories they picked, they fit into those slots. For instance, the first lesson, the call of the apostles, I'll make you fishers of men. On Monday, we talked about the apostles as fishermen and what it takes to be just a normal fisherman. And we correlate that idea of fishing, what they knew about fishing, what we know about fishing, and how you go about catching men, much like a fisherman. Yesterday, when we were talking about this picture, we took a generalized view of it, okay? I know from one day to the next it's hard to remember the subject from yesterday. And believe it or not, that's hard for me too. When you're writing sermons, once you start on the next one, you tend to forget what you did last week. But yesterday, as we are looking at this thing, the subject was comfort and peace. And what we used to talk about comfort and peace was Jesus saying to the storm, "Peace, be still." What's the picture here? Generalized picture. Is this a picture of peace? Jesus gives peace. The great lesson of calming the storm. Can Jesus give peace? Jesus gives peace. So far, if we talk about using the stories that were provided by the ones that put the lessons together, all these stories so far, they've got a slot to go into. One more thing. As we concluded the lesson yesterday on peace, we were talking about how Jesus can give us peace. And we looked at these particular areas. Jesus has power over the nations. He can act providentially in my life, and He can give me inner peace, peace in my heart. These are the ways in which Jesus can give us peace. Now, for the lesson tonight's the biggest stretch. We're going to stretch a little bit because I want to accommodate what we are doing to the lesson plan. We're going to go back to the river and notice the little oddity. In Ezekiel 47, you got the picture of the river getting bigger and bigger, giving life everywhere it goes. And in the 11th verse, but its swamps and marshes will not become fresh, they will be left for salt. You got a picture. In the picture, you got to leave the marshes alone because you just got to have salt. What's salt for? What was the importance of salt? Is salt a valuable commodity? especially back then. What can you do with salt? Pardon me? You can preserve food, or you can make it taste a whole lot better. I hope I got the right picture. Oh, back it up a little bit. Well, this one we'll just use to talk about the value of it before I get to the next one. You've seen that before, whether you know it or not. Somewhere in a documentary, you've seen what's going on here. That's the Dankili Valley in Ethiopia. These guys are coming into this hole in the ground, this desert place that's like 130 degrees, like Africa's version of Death Valley. They're taking camels in there and taking little pickaxes, masses of salt around. They're picking at it, knocking it into shape, little squares, stacking it up, and hauling the salt out. There's no water. Any water in there, they've got to haul in with them. So they load up the salt on the camels, then they take it out. Why are you willing to do that? It's just salt. Everybody needs some salt. It's one of these things that we kind of take for granted. I asked the question this morning. Did I get the right picture this time? Yeah. Is there anybody here that doesn't salt their eggs? This morning we had like 3 people that didn't salt their eggs in the class. And I thought that has to be a medical reason behind that. And we all know what the medical reason is. Salt raises your blood pressure. And some of us know that, but we salt our eggs anyway. Salt makes it taste a whole lot better. Now on the right, you're looking at jerky. What does salt have to do with that? Tries the moisture. Does it help preserve it? Does it last longer? Question I asked this morning. Do you know why ketchup was invented? It was invented before there were French fries. And it didn't look anything like ketchup today. Before we had refrigerators, how do you preserve meat? Salt. Was it easy to preserve? It was expensive, and sometimes it went bad. Ketchup was invented, so even after it started going bad and was rotten, you could put it on and still eat it. Which doesn't make it sound very appetizing, does it? Now, the refrigerator, great invention. Before that, if you wanted to preserve meat, you used salt. That's just about all that you had. Now, we think of this. We think of the value of salt, and we still ask the question, what does salt have to do with that picture? Why do you got to leave the marshes alone to preserve the salt? What does that have to do with Jesus and the gospel? Turn to Matthew chapter 4. In Matthew 4, you have the call of the fishermen. Jesus called them one by one, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. That's chapter 4. That plugs in very nicely to what we saw in Ezekiel. And then we go into chapter 5, Sermon on the Mount. As the Sermon on the Mount begins, great sermon, we start out with the Beatitudes. Now, I will ask for a volunteer, and I do not want to answer this question myself. When you think about the Beatitudes, what is Jesus telling us in the Beatitudes? What are we being shown? I'll ask for a volunteer, Jimmy. Are we being shown the type of behavior God wants us to exhibit? This is what a child of God ought to be. The world thinks of, here's what the world thinks a man ought to be. Jesus says, this is what a man ought to be. So you get that picture in the Beatitudes of what we're supposed to be. And then in the 13th verse, what's the very next verse say? You are the salt of the earth. How is it that we can function as the salt of the earth? Not brain surgery. We're told, here's what you ought to be. Very next statement, here, you're the salt of the earth. Steve? Yeah. 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 Beatitudes, here's what you ought to be. And when you are this, what is the effect that you have on the world around you? That's how you're salt. You become the kind of people that God wants you to be, and you are the salt of the earth. We are preservatives. We make the world more palatable, and we do perform a valuable function. Now, when we talk about sharing our Savior, it involves this work. One of the great functions is being the salt of the earth. Now, here's where we twist a little bit to get the story that they were asking for into what we wanted to talk about. The story is Jesus and Peter walking on the water. Let's turn to John, the 6th chapter. I'd like for everybody to look at John chapter 6 and to yourself read verses 16 through 21. And we say this is the story of Jesus and Peter, both of them walking on the water. But when you look at it in John's account, what do you not notice? You don't see Peter, do you? Peter's not in John's account. Now, does somebody want to guess why that might be? And this is speculation. Which gospel account was written last? Gospel of John. The synoptic gospels were written earlier. Had the story of Peter already been told? Everybody knew that story. Wasn't any real reason to bring Peter into it in John's account. But what we do want to notice about John's account is John gives the setup concerning the events that are going to be happening on that day. Now, if you go back to the first part of chapter 6, how does this chapter start out? What's going on here? Great miracle. Feeding of the 5,000. Jesus feeds 5,000 people with loaves and fish, just a handful. Does it get everybody's attention? But did they get the point? What verse lets us know that the multitude didn't get the point? Verse 26 will work. Jesus answered them and said, Truly, truly, I say to you, you seek me not because you saw signs, but because you ate the loaves and were filled. Now, that's the bottom line of it, but back up to the 15th verse. We'll start here. So Jesus, perceiving that they were intending to come and take him by force to make him king, withdrew again to the mountain by himself alone. Jesus does the miracle, and immediately they want to do what? Make him a king. Did Jesus come to be an earthly king? Somebody give me a verse that would emphasize the idea that Jesus did not come to be an earthly king. It can be real simple. My kingdom is not of this world, otherwise my disciples would fight. He didn't come to be an earthly king, but this multitude did not realize that, and they tried to make him an earthly king. They just did not get it. Now, in some ways, we look at this multitude, we think about them, and this is a group of people that's slow to catch on. This is a difficult group of people. So Jesus takes off to cross the sea. The disciples take off to cross the sea. And then we come to Peter in Matthew chapter 14. Let's go over there. Matthew 14, verses 25 through 31. Shane, would you read that, please? Yeah, 25 through 31. Okay, that's good. Think about Peter walking on the water, or at least trying to. Did he make a good effort or a bad effort? Better than the rest of them. We look at Peter and we think, well, at least he had the nerve to step out there initially. But what happens? What caused him to sink? Usual lesson. He's focusing on the problem instead of focusing on Jesus. And so he starts to sink. But that's not what we really want to emphasize tonight. The point. Earlier in the day, had he been dealing with difficult people? The crowd that wanted to make him a king? Is he still dealing with difficult people? His own disciples? He's dealing with difficult people all the way around here. How does Jesus deal with people who are slow to catch on? Early in the day, it had been the crowd. Now, Peter and the apostles. We are talking about dealing with people who are slow to catch on. I want to run a list of verses. Everybody go to Mark 6 and verse 34. This led to the feeding of the 5,000. When Jesus went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. These are difficult people, but we find out that he has compassion for them. What's compassion? Care and concern. Use an illustration. Okay, I'm walking in the mall, and Patrick Mahomes walks by. Y'all know who Patrick Mahomes is? Patrick Mahomes, ball player. I might be amazed if I see Patrick Mahomes. He's probably a lot bigger than I think he is. And I know he's a lot richer than I think he is. So I might be amazed when I see him, but would my reaction be one of compassion? He's younger, he's bigger, he's richer, he's better looking, he's got everything. It's not compassion I'm going to feel. Okay. I'm watching TV. I see a commercial for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And I see a kid sitting in a wheelchair who's probably had 30 operations in his life. And you can tell by the way he talks that he is not fazed. He probably has more guts than I will ever have. What am I going to feel toward him? That's compassion. When you see that person that your heart goes out to because there is a problem that they are struggling with. Now, Jesus looks at this multitude, difficult people, hard-headed people, and he feels compassion. He cares about them. He feels compassion toward them. And you don't feel compassion unless you realize that somebody is struggling with a problem. And he knows that they are struggling with a problem. Now let's go to Mark 4. Back up a little bit. Mark 4, verses 33 and 34. With many such parables, he was speaking the word to them so far as they were able to hear it. He did not speak to them without a parable, but he was explaining everything privately to his disciples. Sermon in parables. He's teaching them in parables. And it says he speaks to them in parables as they are able to hear it. If somebody were to ask you the question, why did Jesus speak in parables? What's the answer? As they were able to hear it. And then the question is, what does it mean? If Jesus had walked into that group of people who think that it's all about an earthly kingdom, who think they're going to dominate the world, if he walks into that crowd and says, by the way, yeah, I'm the Son of God, I came down from heaven, the eternal purpose is me and the church and the salvation of mankind, I did not come here to set up an earthly kingdom, could they have handled it? As they were able to hear it means he's breaking it to them as they can deal with it. He is spoon feeding them. And sometimes that's what you have to do to deal with difficult people. I have a granddaughter. Now she's 17 years old. And if you've seen Sarah May, she looks like she's 8 or 9 years old. To this day, she doesn't eat. She has a tummy button. Has to be fed that way. Now, what if I were to walk into my son's house and say, you know what, this is a bunch of garbage. It's time she learned to eat. Give her a hot dog and tell her to eat or to go hungry. Is that going to work? She's not ready to eat. That can't happen. Would that be kind or abusive? It can't be. Sometimes when you're working with difficult problems with people, you have to make progress as people are able to deal with it. Now, he is dealing with difficult people here. And he starts out with compassion for them. He breaks the truth to them as they are able to handle it. But, let's go to Mark 9. In Mark 9, I'd like for us to look at verses 14 through 22. Jay, would you read that for us? Mark 9, verses 14 through 22. Okay, I want to notice something. Got this issue here. And again, these are people who are difficult to deal with. This guy has a kid who's demon possessed. The disciples can't help him. Wants to know if Jesus can, if you can. And Jesus makes the comment, how long am I going to be able to put up with you? Is it always easy to put up with situations where you're trying to help people and work with them and get them to see the light? Is that always easy? Do you sometimes feel like, I don't know if I can put up with this anymore? Did he put up with it? Sometimes you just got to put up with it. You got to stay with it. When Jesus works with people of the world who are a little bit slow, he's compassionate. He deals with them as they're able, works with them at their speed. And sometimes you just got to eat it and swallow hard when it gets a little bit difficult. Now, there are also some verses that pertain to the brethren, to the 12. Let's go to Mark 4 and verse 33. I've already looked at this. We'll look at it again. Mark 4 and verse 33. With many such parables, he was speaking the word to them so far as they were able to hear it. And he did not speak to them without a parable, but he was explaining everything privately to his own disciples. Sometimes when he's dealing with the hard-headed multitudes, he's got to take his disciples aside and explain. Question, when you're dealing with a large group of people, okay, we got a group of people here on any given Sunday morning, we're going to have about 250 people here. In a group of that size, will there be some that sometimes you just got to take them aside and say, this, look at 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 this, to get them to see it? Sometimes you have to explain privately and just keep working with people. Let's go to John 13. John 13, verses 13 through 15. Jackson, do you have that? John 13, verses 13 through 15. Yeah. Okay. Jesus washes feet. Now picture this. You guys don't know this, and I could prove it, but I won't. Who's got the worst feet in this whole congregation? I do. And I think I could prove that pretty easy. My feet are awful. Well, I'm going to leave it there. But they are. The last thing I did was pick up a fungus, maybe in the Philippines, that we've been treating it for over a month now, trying to get rid of it. It ate my left foot. Horrible feet. Now, some of you might be able to match up, but I don't know. But picture this. Here's Jesus with his disciples, and he washes their feet. Son of God, creator of the world, washing these guys' feet. Why is he washing their feet? And I kind of understand why Peter could feel a little sheepish about this. It might make us all feel a little sheepish. But why is it important to Jesus that he washes their feet? I did this because you needed what? You needed to see the example. Sometimes when you're dealing with difficult people, you just got to get in and do the thing that you want others to copy. Sometimes you explain privately, sometimes you got to get in and do it, even if it is an unappetizing thing. And, you know, what we emphasize at this point in time, there's probably some job in the world that to us would be more distasteful than washing feet. I can't think of it at the moment. But Jesus did that so he could deal with some difficult people and teach the lesson that needed to be taught. Now let's go to John 16. Oh, just something to think about while we're going over there. We talk about difficult people, working with difficult people. Hard for me to relate to because I've never been difficult. My wife was here this morning. I didn't get by with that. Are we all difficult once in a while? This is the thing we try to remember. You know, it's always the other guy that's difficult. And sometimes it is, but as Christians, every once in a while, we step back and take a look at ourselves, and it dawns on us that sometimes I'm the difficult guy who's in need of somebody to help me out. Now, in John 16, verses 7 through 12, Jesus talks to the disciples again. He says, "But I tell you the truth, it is to your advantage that I go away. For if I do not go away, the Helper will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. And he, when he comes, will convict the world concerning sin and righteousness and judgment. Concerning sin, because they do not believe in me. Concerning righteousness, because I go to the Father, and you no longer see me. And concerning judgment, because the ruler of this world has been judged. I have many more things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. But when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all the truth, for he will not speak on his own initiative, But whatever he hears, he will speak, and he will disclose to you what is to come. Jesus was going to send them a what? A helper, a comforter. They never can decide how they want to translate that particular word. But the Spirit was going to be a helper. The Spirit was going to be a comforter. Sometimes when we talk about things that we have to do with our brethren, we just got to be willing to help them. Guide them, use the Spirit's word to help them understand what their obligations are. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Kyle used Isaiah 42, verses 1 through 4 in a sermon, talking about Jesus. It's prophecy concerning Jesus. And the prophecy was, a bruised reed he will not break. What's that mean? Somebody give me a good explanation of that. A bruised reed he will not break. What's a reed? It's a plant that grows by water. Send a bunch of little kids down to the water, and there's a bunch of willows down there. If there's a bunch of boys down there, what are they going to do with some of those reeds? Crack them, break them. Some of them are going to be laid over for certain. A bruised reed he will not break. We're not talking about literal reeds. What are we talking about? Somebody give me an example of a person that you would look at and think, bruised reed. Yes, he was. When? Several wins you could give me. Give me one. Yeah, that's coming up later this week. Bruised reed. In the congregation, could you find some bruised reeds? I mean, people hurting, teetering, struggling. A bruised reed he will not break. Jesus' attitude toward the struggling person was that you ought to be doing better by now. Is that it? When it says a bruised reed he will not break, what Jesus was interested in doing was fixing people and not crushing them. Now, all of these things, we think about the way Jesus dealt with difficult people, and then we ask the question, well, okay, well, what's that got to do with me? Let's put two things together. Ezekiel 47, Ezekiel's river. All these things tie in with the gospel, the description of the gospel. In this river, you just got to have salt. And then we are told in Matthew 5, you are the salt of the earth. What's that mean to me? By my deeds, by my example, I need to have an impact on the people who are around me. Get people to build their life on Jesus, show them the right way. Now, as I try to do this, are there going to be some people who are difficult, slow to catch on? How about your friends? Any of you out there have a knot-headed friend that just can't get it? Everybody does. How about your kids? Now, if your kids are sitting next to you, plug your ears. The problem with kids, what do we want for them? I want a parent to tell me what it is that you want for your child as they go into adulthood. Volunteer. We want the best, but how are we going to define the best? I don't care. All my kids, grandkids, I told them, you don't have to be rich, you just got to carry your own weight in this world. You better know the answer to this. What do I want for my grandchildren more than anything else? I want them to stay on the path. What's the problem? They have free will. And sometimes that makes it difficult. We have all these things that we have to confront with. Our acquaintances, sometimes they're difficult. Our kids, sometimes they're difficult. The people we work with, are they difficult? 4 kinds of soil in the parable of the sower. 4 kinds of soil. In the workplace, how many of those kinds of soil are you likely to run into? You're going to run into all of them. And it's going to be difficult. So, you're going to be running into all kinds of people that can be difficult, that can be slow to catch on, that are going to make you sometimes say, how much longer can I put up with this? But what are you going to do? You're going to be salt. And that's what we're going to be doing. You are the salt of the earth. You've got to have salt. The salt is the preservative. Compassion. Okay. If a little kid comes in here on crutches with something that maybe he's never going to get over, he's going to deal with it all his life, are you going to have compassion? Oftentimes when we see the people of the world, the masses out there, we don't feel that. But why should we have compassion on a different level for the masses? Give me a reason. It's simple. The Lord has compassion, and what do they all face? If a person is not a Christian, he is ultimately facing what? And the times of this ignorance God winked at, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent, because he hath appointed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness. That's a compassion maker. We see men out there that we know the direction that things are going. So we deal with compassion, and we try to deal with people as they are able to hear it. Okay, we'll pick on Mark. Here's Mark. Mark's somebody I work with, and he's a little bit difficult. But I want to alleviate my responsibility toward Mark. So I just kind of dropped the whole bundle on him one day. Well, I want to tell you this about the Bible, and this about God, and this about where you're going in eternity, and what you've got to do if you expect to be saved. Just drop the whole load on him, way more than he can handle at one time. But I feel better because I've at least alleviated my responsibility. Is that the idea? As they were able to hear it. We're trying to work this in. Are we going to have to put up with some stuff? The person who wants to be salt is going to pay a price for it. Because when you look at everything up there, being compassionate, making the effort to give it to people as they were able to hear it, are they always going to appreciate it? Let's run some verses. Let's go to Acts chapter 21. We're just kind of charting the Apostle Paul in the last part of the book of Acts. In Acts 21 and verse 31, while they were seeking to kill him, a report came up to the commander of the Roman cohort that all Jerusalem was in confusion. They want to kill him. Chapter 22, verses 24 and 25. The commander ordered him to be brought into the barracks, stating that he should be examined by scourging so that he might find out the reason why they were shouting against him that way. But when they stretched him out with thongs, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, "Is it lawful for you to scourge a man who is a Roman and uncondemned?" Picture that in your mind. They had stretched him out with thongs. He's tied up, ready to beat. Pretty intense when you think of it that way. One of the feelings we like the least is the idea of helplessness. And that's what he was. Chapter 23 and verse 2, the high priest Ananias commanded those standing beside him to strike him on the mouth. Chapter 24 and verse 5, for we have found this man a real pest and a fellow who stirs up dissension among all the Jews throughout the world and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. Sometimes you got to put up with a lot. Last comment I'm going to make. There's Kyle sitting back there now. Kyle's got enough experience right now. I can't exactly talk about him like a kid preacher. But pretend you are for a minute. Looking at it over the years, and I've had a few now where I could look at it over the years, watching preachers, I've seen some preachers that had a low tolerance for putting up with things. If, some little problem arose, well, got to go someplace else. I never noticed any of them really accomplishing much. If you want to accomplish something where the work of the Lord was concerned, if you want to be salt, this is the way we got to act toward our brethren. We'll stop there. And thank you for coming. Today we had another good attendance. Haven't counted tonight. I'm going to estimate that we are right around 200 today, which the attendance has been much better. Well, it's better than I'd personally hoped for, and we appreciate that very much. Tomorrow's Thursday. Tomorrow morning, we'll have Bible class at 9 o'clock and back again tomorrow night. Tomorrow's Thursday, isn't it? When you're in VBS, it's easy to lose track of what day it is. But tomorrow night will be the last night we're here. We'll conclude. And Larry, you'll be speaking? Larry will be here tomorrow night. Let's stand and we'll be dismissed with a prayer. Glenn, would you direct us, please?